So here we are. Today is the big day. Mr. President will be delivering the State of the Nation address. What is your State of the Nation? Well, the minority in Parliament has called on the President to be truthful about the country he inherited from the previous administration as he delivers his maiden State of the Nation address to Parliament today. Of course, you caught some excerpts there, some reflections. We'll let you hear more from Parliament in terms of what the truth is and what their expectations are. And after that, we'll come into the studio. So let's catch some more snippets of that before we come into the studio. Right now, and joining me in the studio, we have Dr. Jabir Mohammed. He joins the conversation. Of course, he is an economist and political risk analyst. Okay, so he is the University of Ghana lecturer at the School of Business. My apologies. He's a senior lecturer, University of Ghana Business School. We have Mark Bedu Abuaje. He is with the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, and he also joins the conversation. Then we have Dr. Joseph Obeng of GUTA, the Ghana Union of Traders Association, and we have Dr. John Osai Kwapong, a CDD fellow. All of them join the conversation. We also have Dr. Theo Echampong. He's an economist and political risk analyst. But let me start from the studio. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining the conversation. Let me find out as well who is on Zoom yet. Dr. Echampong, Theo Echampong, do we have you joining the conversation, sir? All right.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Okay, you are the boss, Dr. Echampong. Thank you for joining. We also have Dr. John Osai Kwapong. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you too, Benjamin.
It's a pleasure having you. Dr. Joseph Obeng, GUTA, good morning to you, sir. In your trademark hat. Dr. Obeng, good morning. You would have to unmute, Dr. Obeng.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just wanted to do a sound check to ensure that everybody is on board before we kickstart the conversation. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
So I shall start from the studio. Dr. Mohammed, here we are. It's the State of the Nation address, and now some are saying, oh, come and deliver the truth, what you inherited and all of that. But from the economic standpoint, what do you see from where we are as a country with the IMF program and everything, and what your expectations are in terms of the State of the Nation address? What are the things that have to be spoken about?
Thank you, and good morning to you, and good morning to all our listeners. The State of the Nation address is a very important one because every president in the Fourth Republic had delivered such an important program in the history of Ghana. I believe that the economy is a very important element when it comes to the State of the Nation address. And of course, the IMF program had been with us, and roughly we have done almost 2 years. It's going to be 3 years, and the amount of money that has come in so far has helped to shape the economy in a particular way. So I expect the president to be in a better position to present to us or to present to the nation the true state of the country, especially regarding the program and how we are going to communicate or how we are going to push things into a better position so that at least at the end of the day, we are going to be in a better position as a country. Now, if you look at the inflationary stance of the country today, we are about 23%. It was way about 54%, and now it's currently at 23%, which means that at least we still need to put things in a better position so that we can ensure that the living standard of the people in the country are better off. You know, we measure the living standard of the people by the nature of the cost of living, and inflation is one of the key elements when we come to measuring the cost of living. So I expect that we are able to put in strategies and measures in place to ensure that we have a solid and a sound economy in terms of cost of living, and that because every Ghanaian is looking at how they can cater for their basic needs. And if inflation is at a high as 23%, you can imagine what people are going to be experiencing. So better strategies should be put in place to be able to, gauge the interaction between the citizen and that of the economic outlook of the country. Now, if you look at the other elements, we're speaking about 24-hour economy. And 24-hour economy is the key element of the country. Is a key issue that the NDC administration used to come into power. So what are we putting in place? What are the measures, what are the strategies that the president is going to put in place to ensure that the 24-hour economy come to stream and work efficiently? If you look at it critically, you realize that you want to work 24 hours. Look at the system, electricity. Are we going to have light throughout the period? 24-hour economy, we need to have power. And energy is very important to drive that particular force.
Stable power.
Stable power. So we need to have that. So I want to see a concrete measures that the president is going to put in place to ensure that we have a stable power so that the 24-hour economy can run efficiently. So I think basically this.
Basically, so succinctly, those are some of the things you would look at. And especially as you talk about inflation, as I come to Mark, then from the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I'm sure you're going to also be contemplating borrowing. I'm sure Dr. Obeng would be doing that, but borrowing as well in terms of being able to do business and the cost of doing business. Yeah. But from your standpoint as the Chamber of Commerce, what are some of the issues that you would be looking at, hoping to hear the status of in respect of our national life?
Thank you very much. I think the state of the economy is everybody knows. Every Ghanaian has his own way of assessing the state of the economy. Your pocket at least will tell you, and whether you have a job or not will tell you the current state of the economy. But I would prefer that as the president, he should now be able to tell us exactly what the situation is before we come out with the various policies to address what the challenges are. If you look at the one His Excellency Nana Addo presented prior to his exit on the 3rd of January, that for me is his handing over note to the current president. I am expecting that the president will either accept those things that are in it or deny them or dispute them. Obviously, there have been several disputes about what was presented to us on the 3rd of January. The president clearly said, the former president, that the economy is not broke and that he's handing a very resilient and robust economy to the current president. I want to know whether indeed he was handed a very resilient economy, because the data that we have is not suggesting that the economy is as resilient as it was presented to us. So once it's been there for at least 2 months, and if you add the transition period, close to 3 months, he has all the necessary information, the data, to put it to us that this is what I inherited. Is it good? Was the economy broke? Are we going to have challenges going forward? Then we will look at all these issues. He made mention of inflation, and obviously inflation of 23% is very high. For an economy that is resilient, we don't expect that you have an inflation of 23%. For the economy that is resilient, we don't expect that you have a policy rate of 27%, an interest rate as high as 35%. Economy that is resilient and want to support businesses, we don't expect to see all these numerous nuisance taxes running around and affecting businesses. So for me, it's just a way to either check and tell us that what Nana Addo presented to us is indeed what the state of the economy was and what he is going to do going forward. I remember prior to the exit of the president again, the Ministry of Finance, they told us that we've turned the corner, which some of us challenged because of the difficulties that we were going through. I want to know whether indeed at the time they were telling us that they've turned the corner, we had indeed turned the corner. So we, all of us, for me, it should be as straightforward as it is. Because if you want to reset an economy or any situation, you should know the current condition before you'll be able to come out with policies and ideas to solve any challenge. So for businesses, we are looking forward that the president will tell us what exactly the state of the economy is, as we have seen, and also tell us how he also is going to navigate the economy through the various challenges that I have enumerated and my brother has also enumerated. So that's what we are waiting to see this morning. For me, I'm not sure that it's going to be any whitewash. It's not the same party that is continuing for them to tell us that we have done A, B, C, D, when indeed people know the condition in which they find themselves. So now that is a different government, we need a fair assessment of Ghanaian state, the economy, all the sectors. I also remember that we were told we have constructed a number of roads, so many kilometers. I'm sure that the president will tell us whether indeed those roads have been constructed. The Agenda 111 that we were told they were in several forms of levels of completion. Recently, I heard that only one was fully completed, even without all the necessary equipment that were needed to run a very efficient hospital. I expect that all these things will also be labor, galamsey issues and security issues. So we are all hoping that the true state, as others have said, that the truth is what we want. It's only then that we will be able to come out with programs and policies to be able to move forward.
All right. Thank you for those thoughts. I have an interesting comment come through. Cassius Simumba says, I would also like to share the state of my nation, Zambia. But today we are talking about Ghana, so let's focus on Ghana for now. I don't know whether you're watching us all the way from Zambia, but let me also bring in Dr. Joseph Obeng. I want us to hear from all those who are in the thick of things when it comes to business. Dr. Obeng, for you, what is the current state of the economy and what are some of the aspects of the economy, especially when it comes to business, trade, that you would like to hear President Mahama touch on today in his SONA?
So, cost of doing business is too high in this country. The taxes that we pay are so numerous, and they are not even simplified. They are very complex. And so, all that I want to hear is the mechanism or the measures that the president will put in place to stabilize the local currency, to bring down inflation, to bring down interest rates, and then also stabilize the foreign exchange. It's all that the business people would need the stability so that we can do our business. We want to also hear the policy direction of government by way of rationalizing the tax system, as the president himself has been saying, because he said that we have to rationalize the tax system. What mechanism is he putting in place to reduce the taxes, to make them simplified, make them more affordable, and then make them more uniform? Because if you look at the VAT is such that you cannot even comply with it, because one tax system does have 3 forms. And so we need all these measures that will streamline, or as the president himself says, you rationalize the tax system. We need all these things. Then I'm also expecting that the president will talk about the fixed tax system that was promised, the spare parts trading, because he said that he will give us fixed tax system. It means that if you import spare parts, there's going to be a fixed amount of duty that will be known to you that you pay. And that is also a game changer for the trading community, because if that one succeeds, it means that it will be replicated to other commodity lines, commodities that we import into the country. Then I'm expecting to hear something from a 24-hour economy.
Right.
The incentive the government is going to do, because although he's going to lobby business people to do this 24-hour economy, but he has to provide the incentives and then create the enabling environment that will attract the business people to patronize it and enhance on productivity, because it's all about enhancing on productivity, increasing on production. If you increase production, it means that you have to employ more hands. That will make the shift system possible for us to achieve the 24-hour policy. Then, of course, we can't talk about taxes, and all these things where we do not look at the structure of our expenditure. Our expenditure, as I normally say, is overpriced. We have to find a way to scrutinize how we spend in this country.
Doc, when you say our expenditure is overpriced, what exactly do you mean?
Overpriced because if you look at our procurement system, it's not helping. Because how many times have you not heard that a project that maybe MTN is doing is social responsibility, is building a school for a community, cost about maybe 600,000 Ghana cedis. Government will do it and it will cost about 115. It will cost about 1 point something billion and all that. It means that we are wasting. The misappropriation there is just too much. And so we have to scrutinize and evaluate. So we have to bring policies that will ensure value for money expenditure. If we do not do that, it's a waste of time, all these things that we're talking about, because then government will get the tax and it will be overused, and the money will go to just a few people who have who get the opportunity of the expenditure. Yeah.
Right. Let me also bring in Dr. John Osai Kwapong. From your end, what would be the snapshot of what you see and what your initial expectations would be of Mr. President when he delivers his maiden State of the Nation address today? And of course, I would like you also to look at the governance aspects of issues as well.
Yeah, good morning once again. We've been hearing him as well as members of his administration talk about the kind of economy they came to meet, the state of affairs of the country as they inherited it. In the lead up to the 2024 election, I think Ghanaians themselves also knew and felt the kind of country they were living in. So on that part, I'm not sure if there'll be anything new that Mr. President would share that Ghanaians didn't feel, and therefore that is what made them vote the way they did in December.
Right.
On the governance issues, and what I expect though is that in this maiden State of the Nation for his second presidency, I expect him to outline the key governance reforms that his administration is looking at, but more importantly, the timelines around those reforms. I mean, he promised some key things during the campaign. So for me, it's setting that stage and saying, okay, over the next year, given the state of the governance situation in the country that we inherited, these are some of the things that we plan to do. More importantly for me is he also outlined a 120-day social contract with the people of Ghana.
Indeed.
And that is what I am looking forward to seeing, an updated report. I know the 120 days is not up, but I would like to hear progress towards attaining the things that was laid out in that 120-day social contract.
I see. Interesting points you make, because the 120-day social contract also feeds into this conversation and what our expectations can be in the first, quarter, and then maybe moving forward, especially as the budget is also due to be bred. But let me also bring into the conversation Dr. Theo Champong. You are an economist and political risk activist. What do you see in terms of the risks that lie ahead, the state of our economy, and maybe the boons, the positives as well, and what your expectations will be?
Yeah, good morning. So I think to give credit to the government, they've started relatively well in terms of executing their policy agenda. Some of the key appointments have been made. We've seen them make a number of commendable moves in relation to the first 120 days social contract on both the economic front, but as well as social issues, so like education, And then on the economy, I think next week they're having the National Economic Dialogue. And we're also seeing some moves on anti-corruption with oral and related matters. But I think what is important, like the other panelists have said, is we need a level of honesty from the president in terms of where things really sit within the country, especially on the economy. And I say this for one reason. So we've heard relatively that the MPP said they left a better economic situation than like they came to meet it. My concern, and I'd highlighted this in a number of interviews before, is that normally in the 6 months to elections in this country, we see a lot of spending that happens outside of what has been committed within budgets. And you only tend to actually find out how deep the rot or the issue is after the election. So normally 2-3 months post-election is when you realize that things are actually not as good as we expected them to be. So whereas the first 6 months of last year, the numbers would have relatively been positive and probably aligned with the objectives of the IMF program, I personally wouldn't be surprised if during this SONA and then subsequently next month when the actual budget, the 2025 budget is delivered, that a lot of our fiscal numbers are actually a bit out of gear, especially when you look at the state-owned enterprises and the hemorrhage that they would have caused, because some of them were used to deliver or execute politically related projects in the run-up to the election. That is one of the biggest concerns that I have at the moment, that when we get to find out the totality of the numbers from June to December of last year, the fiscal situation would have been a bit more worse than anticipated. And what this then means really is that some of the proposed tax incentives like the government wants to give, for example, under the 24-hour economy policy, for example, the taxes that the government wants to scrap on e-levy and COVID and all of that, some may not be fully removed, or these incentives would have to be restructured in a slightly different manner without them having a major impact on the deficit and the exchange rate and all the other things that we are all, complaining about in that context. So I think there are a number of big ticket things that, for me, I expect the president to speak about with a level of honesty around the economy, around the tax issues, around employment, and sort of more medium to long term, what they're going to do to create more employment. Others have mentioned energy, security issues, galamsey issues. I would expect him to talk about infrastructure, right? So they mentioned the big $10 billion plan or push that they want to use to deliver infrastructure in partnership with the private sector. How exactly is that going to be done or delivered without it having a major impact on our debt sustainability? Right. Those sort of issues are quite important. Again, in the social sectors, I'm just wrapping up, if you look at health and education, traditionally these two sectors, the major interventions there have been donor funded and donor supported. And we've seen USAID, we've seen recently the FCDO, the British government, saying that they're going to scale back on their aid programs and all of that. So again, when you're having these major funding or major gaps in health and probably even in education, questions arise. For example, on pre-SHS, should we allow those that have the means to be able to pay to support their children, at least for the feeding in senior high school, to be able to do that? I am on record for saying yes to that people have to pay. The state subsidizes the day school component of it. But if you want to go to boarding house, you have to contribute something in support, of that. John spoke about corruption and governance, and the fact that these have big issues in terms of the cost of doing business in the country. And this is a major impact on the competitiveness of Ghana vis-a-vis other countries in the jurisdiction. So these are all things that, for me, I would expect the president to touch on. I don't think we're going to get full answers to all of them. Some he will make reference to the manifesto, but the important thing is that the SONA actually then sets the tone for the actual budget that will be delivered in the middle of March.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your initial comments. I'll come back into the studio and starting again with Dr. Mohammed. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I know where you lie on the religious spectrum, but John 18:38, there's something interesting there. Pilate would ask Jesus, what is truth? If you recall, any day, what is truth? And you see, in our jurisdiction, truth usually depends on which political lenses you wear. So when the minority, for example, said, we want you to be truthful and all of that, which is the truth? The truth, the gospel according to Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, or the gospel according to John Dramani Mahama? But what kind of truth are you hoping to see? What kind of truth did you see in respect of the economy, and what are you hoping to hear on that moving forward? Also from the standpoint of what we can do to make the economy better. Well,
critically, if you look at it, all of them are saying that you have to speak the truth. And the truth is one. You cannot lie about the truth. You understand? It is the picture of the economy that he has to paint. And most of my colleagues have already said a lot. If an aid of 156 million Ghana cedis, dollars is being gone from you, yes, gone. Right. It's gone from you. And you have an oral report here that says that 21-point-something billion dollars has been lost through what do you call it? Is it the remittances? No, not remittances. Or which one? The oral. The oral right. The cost of all of that. The cost of that was about 21-point-something billion. The value. If you translate that into the total, if you use the $156 million and you divide it by 21-point-something billion dollars, you are actually running about 135 years of loss if you were to use that to finance the, the aid. So this means that I want to see a concrete measures that we can put in place to ensure that procurement issues are done and done properly so that we can have value for money. If you don't have value for money, at the end of the day, you are not going to have a better outcome in terms of the resources that you have. Remember that we say that the economy is broke. If the economy is broke, what do you have to do? You have to ensure that you have value for money for everything that you do. If you don't have the value for money for it, at the end of the day, you are not going to have anything running better. Now, I think and if I may just chip in, as you talk about the figures, I was bringing in the bit about remittances because you know of the disjointed, it's about $11 billion or so, a difference. 2019, I saw that spike. There is something that I'm working on with somebody. When he sends the data, I look at it and I said, you have 2019 having remittances about 11-point-something billion, and the rest of the years are running about 3-point-something, 2-point-something billion. This is like an official develop capital inflows, foreign inflows. Which should be pretty simple to track. Which is pretty simple to track if it's passing through the banking system. So that 10 billion or 11-point-something billion that came in, where did the money pass? Who brought the money in? Was it brought in as a result of illegal, money laundering or whatever it is? Remember that recently some people were tracking money. They put money into this and they were trying to containers to flow the money out of the country. These are the channels through which people can use to bring in illegal wealth. So these are the measures. If you want to put in a better strategies in place to make sure that your economy run efficiently, then you have to ensure that some of these illegalities are tracked very well. Now, back to the educational sector that I was trying to make an emphasis on. Right. We are arguing that you need to pay for value for money, right? Free senior high school has been a very serious debate, especially between the two political parties. And I continue to maintain that it's going to be very difficult to be able to disaggregate and tell that this person is worthy, pay this, and the other person is worthy, don't pay that. Yes, boarding schools, someone can genuinely be poor, and the person may be coming from far away. That doesn't deny the person from attending a school, Presec or Achimota or whatever it is. But if the person doesn't have the financial muscle, why not? Look at the waste that will be cost. So as I was saying, if the procurement is done and done properly, I believe that we can cater for all of these basic things. The advanced countries are paying for their people, and I don't see anything wrong with we maintaining the free senior high school, but ensuring that we have value for money. Let's decentralize the system. Let's not keep all the food in Accra and allow one person to do that. Let us allow our cultural sector to be the anchor of providing the needed food to feed that sector. So if you give money to the cultural sector in the budget, let them produce the needed food and feed the schools and feed us here so that the money remains us and we circulate within the system. So I don't entirely believe that let's eliminate it. Let's maintain it, but let's be cautious about the nature in which we spend over there. Let us have value for money, because these are human capital that we are building. And you cannot build human capital in vacuum. It's very expensive, and you really have to do that. So there are so many other things, as we said about the debt structure. I expect to see that the country, through nature of the debt, is reported, because this is what is actually worrying the country. I remember that in 2022, we were out of the international capital market. Why? Because for a period of 2017 to 2022, the government had borrowed about $13.25 billion. You can go and check. And at an average interest rate of 8.25%, which means that is actually too much. And that is how come that we're not able to honor our debt obligations.
Right.
We have to enter into the DD program. So I even expect a very concrete measures that the government is going to put in place to ensure that the debt exchange program is work well. Remember that they have already said that they are giving about 9-point-something billion Ghana cedis to make coupon payment, etc. There are more to come, and I believe that the president should give us concrete measures that they are going to put in place to ensure that the debt exchange program is work appropriately.
I know you'll come back to other issues. I see you've enumerated a number of them there. So let's have a bite-sized discussion, and when I come back to you, you can look at other areas. But here we are, Mark. There's a whole list of items to be looked at. Of course, you are coming from the standpoint of big business and commerce and all of that. But having looked at inflation, the fiscal issues, then you have the flagship programs, you have free SHS, and there are different opinions on them. You heard Doc share his opinion. You have tackling Galamsey infrastructure and all that. How can we make all of these work also in the context of keeping businesses afloat? The right measures to ensure that you can do business and do it well and also help build the economy.
Well, it's not going to be an easy task for...
It's a daunting one.
It's a daunting task, because you go to a level where before you come up again, you need to do a lot of sacrifices. So I expect that we identify these sacrifices that we have to do. Managing an economy in itself is also very difficult, because some of the policies that you bring out may also have some negative impact. For instance, if you say you want to control inflation and for that reason you are increasing the policy rate, you end up also increasing lending rate, and also the cost of production will also go up. So I'm expecting that much as we want to solve the problem, there should be a gradual process at it, and also we should try as much as possible to also minimize the negatives that will come out from some of the positives that we want to achieve.
The negatives that will come out of some of the positives, like which ones?
A typical example of, I use the inflation as a typical example. Of course, if you want to control Galamsey, it's not going to be an easy task, because people think that they don't have food to eat. And for them, that their source of income is illegal, totally. And then when you go, they will fight you. And some of them will even threaten that they will not vote for you, for which reason we are in this current situation. But we have to do it. But in controlling galamsey, what are the other alternatives that you are providing for those who are there? We are talking about Okada. I've seen a process where we want to formalize it and train the people that, because this is what they are doing to eat. So if you want them to do it well, you are training them also and also come with a cost. So whatever policy they are putting in place, I believe that some of them, there may be some consequences that we all have to manage. For us as businesses, we've been asking that some of the tax should be scrapped. And we know the consequences, we know its impact on revenue. If you are removing some of these taxes, that for the previous government, they felt that it's going to give a lot of course, we are talking about the COVID-19, we are talking about the e-levy. For nothing at all, even though we have spoken against this, it's giving the government some sort of revenue. Mm-hmm. If you are taking it out, what is the alternative way of generating revenue? Now, we believe that...
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yes.
Before what you believe. Are you still, as a citizen,
yes,
are you willing to pay these taxes? Are you willing to go on to pay these taxes so maybe government can rake in the revenue and work on where we find ourselves as an economy?
We believe that is not the only solution out. We have spoken against e-levy right from day one. From the rate even to its introduction, we have spoken against it. So we have done advocacy over the years against e-levy, and we are happy that the president, they have listened to us and said they are taking it out. Look, it's about revenue and expenditure. Let's also look at the expenditure side of it. It's not always revenue. In trying to generate revenue, as we have seen, you end up killing businesses. Now, who are those who are paying the taxes? These are the businesses, and the businesses will have to make profit before they pay the taxes. If the cost of production is high interest rate, numerous taxes, obviously they won't get the revenue, the profit to be able to pay those taxes. So some of them, I believe they should be scrapped, but the alternative is what I'm looking out for. How are we going to actually close the gap, if you say revenue gap? Either we are cutting expenditure, or we are finding an alternative way of also generating revenue. If businesses are doing very well, I know businesses who were paying huge taxes and now they have collapsed. If you put in place all the necessary measures for the businesses to come back and then be making profit, they will pay tax and then you get the revenue. The individuals who were working there, that for one reason or the other, they have been sacked because the business is not doing well. They will come, they also pay tax, and then they will also be able to help their family as well. So it's going to be a balance. Right. I don't expect that within 1 year it's going to change the economy. No, I don't think anybody should expect that. It's going to be a gradual process. That's why all of us have to be patient. And also whatever support we have to provide, we will do that. At Chamber of Commerce, we have said that whatever it takes for us to make the 24-hour economy a success, we are going to do that. Because we know it also has the potential to transform the economy. If you have somebody who is manufacturing or producing within 8 hours and say, now I can do 24 hours. If I'm employing 10 people, now I employ 20 because 10 will do during the daytime, 10 will do during the night time. You're employing 20. And if all these small businesses are all doing well, if they are all employing, look at the effect it will have on the economy in terms of reducing the number of people who are unemployed. So we have taken it upon ourselves. We are also coming out with a policy to help those from the university to be able to also establish their own businesses. And we took the model of this
sort of incubator
setups. And we are launching the first one in Takoradi Technical University next Wednesday. We took the model of TESCOM and thing when they train people to become politicians. All the people who are in politics now, one way or the other, they were from this. So why don't we train the people at the universities to become business owners? Sometimes they need a little bit of support. Sometimes they need a little bit of advice. How people went through before they were able to become successful. So for this year, we are opening 5 of such junior youth in the universities, and we're going to do it in all the universities. It's a way of supporting government also for people to create their own jobs and reduce unemployment. So we are all ready to support. One thing I also want to say quickly is that it isn't that the MPP government, all the things that they did were all bad. Obviously, there were some good things that they also did. Let us also acknowledge that this is the good things that they did. This shouldn't always be because we politicize our so much politicized. We always will be reporting on the bad things that happen. But for 8 years, if you are still alive, if you still throughout the COVID issues and all those things, obviously something good was done. I don't want to see a very biased state of the nation economy, state of the nation, but I want to see a fair balance of what the situation is. If it's good, let's say it. If it's bad, let's say it.
Right.
There's only one truth, as he said. And in economy, data will never lie.
Okay.
If you say inflation is 23%, I don't expect that Mahama will come and say inflation is 22% because it's coming from the Ghana Statistical Survey. And if you believe in these institutions, then obviously we should believe them. If they had reported on all the key macroeconomic variables as they should have done, then I don't expect that there will be any difference from what we have seen going forward. So we are looking at how all these things will fashion out and how we can move forward from here.
Dr. Obeng, please unmute, please mute for us. I can hear your voice in the background until I get to you, please. Thank you very much. Mark, thank you for those comments. Let me go to Dr. Theo Champo now, because then we also have the bit about, of course, revenue generated and then expenditure, as Dr. Mohammed will also point to. You look at the taxes that have been spoken about that may be scrapped, and in fact, you have the betting tax, you have the e-levy, you have the COVID-19 levy, among other, nuisance taxes that have been spoken of. These are the foremost ones. And then you look at expenditure, because the devil often is there. We rake in the revenue, but how you spend is the issue. If you take, for example, our analysis of the number of ministers being cut down, it is estimated that we are going to be saving about 40 million Ghana cedis, and we are just talking about salaries, emoluments, not to even talk about other perks, not to talk about the other benefits that these people would have got. We know the structures remain at the ministries, but the individuals, what they would have collected and what that would have meant to the public purse. What is your view on this, and what are your expectations in terms of what the president should be doing, how he should be talking about these in the SONA?
And the funny thing is, we say every little is much, right? 40 million Ghana cedis. If you take that and you divide by, let's say it cost about 800,000 to 1 million to build a 6-unit classroom block adjusted for inflation, that 40 million, and this is the thing that I want a lot of our US and ordinary Ghanaians to appreciate. 40 million will probably build 40 what? 6-unit classroom blocks where we've got many of our people going to school, and even desks to sit on, books to use are not, available in that regard and in that context. And I also think that, look, it's not just the reduction in the number of ministers, it's really also the efficiency savings that you get as a result of rationalizing some of these, right, ministries and departments and agencies, that often you may get 2-3 people doing the same job, and to an extent you could even argue that they are underemployed to a certain extent. But those savings that you get by having a laser focus in terms of the delivery of the policy mandate, for me becomes even more important than sometimes even the headline, numbers that we talk about. But it goes again to what the earlier speaker from the GNCCI and others have said. Look, it cannot just be a revenue conversation. And I've been on your platform and several others over the last few years where we've consistently highlighted, or at least I have, that we don't necessarily have a revenue problem as a country. We have a far bigger expenditure problem. And we keep collecting, we keep piling on the taxes. You choke the business environment. People struggle to borrow, only for those monies that are collected to be wasted, on certain frivolous projects and expenditures down the line. And this is connected to the broader political economy of also the corruption, right, issues in there. And this, for me, goes to the heart of what do we expect the government to deliver within this year and next year in terms of changing this narrative and changing this course around wasteful, expenditure? It's partly systems, but I also think it's partly beyond even that as to the constitutional reforms, the governance reforms that have been promised by the NDC, right? So who do you appoint to run some of these, state-owned enterprises? When people are going there and they don't have the technical wherewithal, or you have people in there and they're using these SOEs just to, reward them for their support during the political campaign, then believe you me, it doesn't matter what the IMF brings or any other person brings, we're still going to be in the same hole. And so I'm looking forward to more radical reforms around how we do things. In the SONA, you only get snippets of it. Hence why I am more interested, particularly on the budget and the other reforms that have been promised to be delivered by this administration, especially around the constitutional reforms, the powers of appointment, who does, because that is really the root, cause of all of these things that we're discussing here in this context. But we need to shift the conversation, in my view, from revenue into the quality of expenditure. And there's a few reports that are out there that actually benchmarks, expenditure quality or spending in the infrastructure space in Ghana vis-a-vis even some of our regional peers. And you'll be shocked how wasteful we are relative to some of the countries that we claim to be competing with within the sub-region. And if you don't address that, then we are only sort of shooting ourselves in the foot.
And speaking of such wastefulness, Dr. Osai Kwapong, I hear the rhetoric of discipline in terms of dealing with our fiscal issues, in terms of how we manage the public purse, in terms of procurement, which has become a devil when it comes to our economy. It's where a lot of the shady deals actually happen. And I don't need to, flog that horse because we are well aware of it. In respect of governance, what are your expectations in terms of streamlining these vis-a-vis working on our economy?
So, we have all in my opinion, we have all the rules in place. We have all the processes in place. We have all the fiscal rules in place, all of that. So it actually surprises me how some of these things can sort of quote unquote, bypass all of these rules in place in terms of the do's and don'ts around how you procure things, how you manage your finances. I always say that when I read the Auditor General's report and I compare it to when I was in secondary school back in the days where they would share excerpts in the daily graphic, the only thing that has changed is not the infractions. It's actually the magnitude of the infractions that have changed. So I think for me, on the governance side, vis-a-vis the economy, to stop some of these leakages, quote unquote, wasteful spending, the enforcement of the rules, but more importantly, the punishment that comes with breaches of the rules becomes a critical part of ensuring that we improve upon governance. Because if year after year we record all of these infractions around how we manage the public purse, as per the auditor's report, and nothing happens to institutions, nothing happens to institutional actors, then there's no incentive to change behavior, there's no incentive to change course. And so that for me will be very critical. How we enforce the rules and how we make sure we hold people accountable for causing any infractions with regards to the rules.
Dr. Obeng, then we come to what directly impacts you. We're talking about a 24-hour economy and what that would mean for traders, what that would mean for business across the length and breadth of the country. There is the $10 billion big push that has also been touted. How are you hoping these would reflect in today's SONA?
Yeah, so that's what I said earlier on, that government have to provide the incentives to attract, create an enabling environment. Because trading is gradually becoming unattractive because of the cost of doing duties and all that. And people are thinking about diversification, that we want to diversify into manufacturing, export, and others. So this provides very good opportunity for government to take advantage and then entice the trading community into diversing into more productive areas like manufacturing and all that. So whatever it is, they should let us have the access.
Dr. Bing, what picture would that paint? How would that look? Because like it or not, inflation is where it is. You heard Mark Bedu Awaje talk about the fact that it will take time. This is not going to be a one-year thing. It will take time for us to reach certain levels. You look at the exchange rate. Yes, it's been stable for a while, but it's pretty high and things must be done. All I'm saying is these will not just happen overnight. So what are some of the immediate term things that can be done to make life better for you in Guta?
Okay, so at least things that can be done immediately is reducing the tax burden. That one is easy because Mark was contemplating about the alternative if we reduce the taxes. But for sure, the key to revenue enhancement is compliance. And then the key to compliance is the simplicity and affordability of these taxes that we pay. That's what government have not seen.
Right.
And that if they are able to pull down these taxes, for sure, it's going to reduce our burden, it's going to enhance our productivity that we so seek. And then we also think about the import substitution programs, where government will deliberately earmark some funds, like you mentioned, and all that, for businesses to access. So when these things are done, these are things that are doable, because you can easily do it, and people can also buy into it and to transform and do things better and better their lot and better that of the generality of Ghanaians. Yeah.
Dr. Mohammed, so on the economic standpoint, you would realize that, for example, this may be tangential in a way, but the mass sackings that have been spoken about, the directive by the chief of staff and all of that, now some amnesty has been given to those in the security services, but generally some have also said, if you're bringing in such numbers without proper streamlining and realizing that these people are fit for purpose, fit to be here, it's going to be cost. And you know of the public sector, the wages, how much government expenditure goes into that. I want you to put that side by side with issues like Agenda 111 and its execution. Free SHS, you started talking about, and its execution. Basically, the flagship programs and the reality of dealing with them, one government to this one.
Well, thank you. The previous government has started a lot of programs. You have mentioned the Agenda 111, which is the one hospital for each district. You have also mentioned about free senior high school, a whole lot of other programs.
There were so many of them.
Yeah, so if you look at it critically, you realize that if you look at our expenditure pattern, the budget, you realize that the compensation to employees takes significant portion of our budget.
Indeed.
Apart from that, you have the interest payment and some other obligations, government transfers to other state institutions and all of that. And that constitutes significant portion of our expenditure pattern. I know that a lot of my colleagues have spoken about expenditure rationalization because that is very critical. And one of the key ways to rationalize your expenditure is to cut down the inefficiencies in your public sector wage bill. So we have so many people that you are bringing on board. You go to the offices, they don't even have places to sit, yet they are on government payroll. What is the efficiency of their productivity vis-a-vis how much they are earning as a wage? Does their productivity match with the wage? Because you know that from economic theory point of view, unemployment is reduced. So a 5 percentage point increase in GDP is going to lead to about 1 percentage point reduction in unemployment, according to the Occam's law. So typically, if you bring in people and they are not going to increase productivity, you are wasting. So if you look at the productivity curve, the more people you add, the marginal productivity reduces as you continue to add more people.
Yeah.
So we want to see...
The marginal benefits.
The marginal benefit is going to what? Reduce. So we want to see... we don't want... So as marginal benefit is reducing, cost is increasing. And that is going to have a serious implication on your other social expenditures, like education, like health, etc., that you spoke about. If you look at it critically, in order to rake in more revenue, we decided to decouple the GET fund and that of the NHIS and make it stand alone as a straight levies. So when you buy something, they compute the NHIS, COVID-19, they compute the GET fund, and they'll add it back to the total cost. After that, they will slap 15% taxes on it.
Which some people
have said
people
that
in the business community have been up and
it's a cascading taxation effect, and it has a very serious implications. Sometimes you go and buy something to come and sell. What you will make out of it, the taxes that you are going to pay from it, it divides your profit into about 3 times of how much taxes that you make. So like others have said, it's about the efficiency of our expenditure. We are not saying that don't employ in the public sector, but employ in such a way that when the people come, their marginal benefit outweighs their marginal costs. It's very, very important. So once we are able to do that, we are able to put those measures in place, then it means that the government is setting a path that they can work very well to be able to consolidate economic transformation. Remember that you cannot have a very strong economic anchor if you don't have a very resilient human capital development. So education and health is very important. These are the 2 elements that constitute the good human capital development. You remember that the government says that they want to come up with national apprenticeship program. And the national apprenticeship program is going to be targeting people who are not in the formal sector. So if you want to target them, you need what? Money to be able to do so. So it's not just about employing people from the senior universities and putting them into the workspaces. Give opportunity to people like my friend here, Mark, and the Guta people. Put in the better strategies and mechanisms. Let us have a labor transition mechanism like they are trying to do, so that when people, before they come out of school, they already know what they want to come out and do. It is not always about coming out of school and getting employed in the formal sector. If you begin your own business, establish and become a successful business person, I mean, you'll be out there. I once wrote in my Facebook wall that I want to be the next Aliko Dangote of Africa. And people were like, how can you do that in the classroom? Then I laughed, because in the classroom, you have more ideas to think. You have more time to think and see how best you can come up with businesses to be able to what? To also create employment. It is a passion to create employment. And if you want to create employment, you need to come up with business ideas. So what are the measures and the strategies that the government is putting in place so that we don't necessarily concentrate more on government employment, so that we have a labor shifting mechanism? The African Development Bank and others have so much. If you look at the African Economic Outlook, in this year, we are focusing more on human capital development. What are the measures and strategies are we putting in place to ensure that we have a better human capital development? So, as I say, if the government wants to shift, then it means that we have to strike the balance. You have given the security services the leeway because you want to ensure that you mop in the 24-hour economy. One of the critical elements in that is security, right? And as I said the last time, it's not just about only the providing police service, army, and all of that. You need to put in place the lighting system, because if you look at in the evening, you go, if you are driving along the street, even our Pukwasi Road, you realize that all the lights are off. Yeah. And you cannot run...
Even the motorway.
You cannot run an economy like that. If you run an economy where it is dark and you say you want to run a 24-hour, you cannot. So we have to tackle some of these things and ensure that we put security cameras everywhere. If the place is well lit, the economy itself will turn into 24-hour economy. You don't need to force a policy there. You provide an enabling environment, and the people will work around the clock to ensure that you have a better...
And the businesses will follow. Is that correct, I mean, looking... And I want us to focus now for a bit on the 24-hour economy, because it's, again, the flagship program of... One of the flagship programs, but probably the biggest of this current administration. How can we actualize it? I know the SONA will not capture everything. The budget likely would start looking at it. But how can we ensure that it meets the expectations of the GNCCI, for example?
Yeah, for me, I think it's doable, because other countries are doing it. But as has been said, you cannot just say, I'm doing 24-hour economy and it will work. There are certain conditions that you have to ensure that they exist on the ground. Now, if you take a manufacturing company, for instance, one thing they would need is energy, electricity. And even the cost of energy for a typical manufacturing company in Ghana is 30% of their total cost of production. So if you are providing the energy, it should be reliable and should also be affordable. The question we are asking ourselves is that, are we there, one, before we start the 24-hour economy? Our cost of...
There's been talk about those who come on board being given certain incentives, including tariff incentives and all of that.
Obviously.
But all of this has to be streamlined.
Exactly. I think that we should go beyond talk. I'll give you a typical case of the one district, one factory. When we were told that those who want to set up some of this factory will be given certain incentives. One is that if you want to go and borrow at the bank, the government will take a percentage of interest rate that you would have paid. So instead of, let's say, 30%, government takes 10%, you will pay 20%. A lot of them did not get some of this incentive that we were promised.
Did that ever happen?
Some did, obviously, but most of them, I mean, a lot of them that were expecting, and people had gone to borrow thinking that there will be this support to add to whatever they have and also set up this manufacturing company. Obviously, some of them, that's why the result is what we are seeing. So sometimes we need to go beyond these manifesto promises and look at how we can implement them and do the things that we say we are going to do. One other key thing, security is also important, but for a business, the 24-hour economy is not only producing goods and services for Ghanaians. We are looking at ECOWAS. We are looking at Africa under the AFTA. The demand is there, but you need to also check on your cost of production as well. If you send your product outside, people will not buy it because it's coming from Ghana. They will buy it, one, because of the quality, and two, because of the price. As I speak to you now,
we are all, even the richest, are rational buyers.
Exactly.
As the economists will tell you, we are rational buyers. We don't buy out of compassion.
That is coming from Ghana, unless they don't have even our own chocolate. I mean, others are doing it. People are buying from them. The goods that we export now are not competitive in the international market, because a typical Ghanaian who wants to export will have to borrow at 35%. Go to Côte d'Ivoire, they are borrowing less than 10%. The cost of utility is less there. Taxes are not as high and numerous as we have here.
Which also explains why we have so many products and people contracting from Ghana all the way to China to produce and bring back. It is more cost efficient to do that than to give it to the Ghanaian supplier to actually
That is why we've seen a lot of import nowadays. If you look at import, the data at 2023, you'll be surprised. Billions and billions of dollars. Toilet roll alone in 2023, we imported $100 million of toilet roll. Are we saying as a country, we cannot produce that? We should be able to, but if you try to produce here, by the time you are done, your price will be higher than the one who has imported. Somebody was trying to make a bit of analysis to see, and we realized that the bottled water, the person wanted to import some from Turkey. The person could have imported bottled water from Turkey and will come and sell it in Ghana here at a lower price than what we are producing here. You can never be competitive under such circumstances. Yeah. You can never operate a 24-hour economy under such circumstances because you have to look at the international market. AFTA has created a market for us. We are saying it's 1.2 billion. If you look at the GDP, all those things are there. But for us to take advantage of that, produce the quality goods, also produce goods that are affordable to the people because you are competing. In fact, the challenge we have if AFTA is in full swing is that goods that are coming even from the North Africa alone, Egypt, Morocco, and the rest, they produce at a very lower cost. They will flood our market. They will kill all the businesses that we have here.
So that will be a localized China example there.
From
North Africa.
Yes, from North Africa. So we should look at this, we should listen to the things that the business community are saying. There are things that if you begin to do them, it will help us. 2 days ago, when I heard that we were going to do the National Economic Dialogue, and I got the things they were going to discuss, I went back to check the Ghana Private Sector Development Strategy 1 and 2, and I checked the things in there. That's about 15 years ago. If you had implemented just 30 to 40% of it, our economy would have changed. And I don't want us to go on the 3rd and 4th and go and discuss the same thing that we have spoken about over and over and over again. Our issue is not policy development. Our issue is how we implement those policies. So we should go beyond the English we are going to speak, the economists will come and speak, private sector will come and speak. We put it in a very good document with the Senche, and we didn't implement them, and that's where we find ourselves. So for me, let's look at the things we can do. As I've said, we cannot do all of them instantly. It should be a gradual process. If you are removing tax, let's look at the nuisance one, remove them. Now, we come back to inflation. Let me just, if you look at what our inflation and what constitutes the inflation that we have, a chunk of them is food. Food inflation. In Ghana, every household, they spend 45% to 50% on food. So your salary, you are spending 50% of food. School fees, other things had not come. Obviously, if you are not careful, you cannot invest and you will die early. That is one thing that we also have to look at. I went back to the planting for food and jobs. The name is there. We are planting for food and jobs. I want President Mahama today to tell me whether we were able to plant for food and jobs. Did we create the jobs out of the planting for food and jobs? And what kind of jobs did we create?
I think even before the president says it, we all know the answer to
No, but obviously, when you are there and you have the numbers, you have the document, things will be clearer than what we are seeing here.
Right.
Obviously, as politicians, they always will come and tell us the sweet things that, during the election time, all the things, no politician will come and say the bad things that they have done. But now that they are there, whoever the Minister of Agric is, in his report in the SONA, I want to see the planting for food and jobs 1 and 2. Right. If you had been able to do that successfully, I don't think we'll have the challenge we are having with inflation. I don't think we'll have some of the challenge we are having with the level of unemployment that we are having. And the fact that we are importing all these things, if you import $1 worth of a product from any country, it means that you are creating $1 worth of employment from where you are importing from, and you are reducing your employment situation by $1 worth. Imagine the billions of dollars of goods and services that we are importing. If you are able, at least, to produce some of them here, we would have created the jobs. We have the capacity and the potential, and we have competitive advantage in key sectors.
Right.
Like the manufacturing sector, agro-processing, cosmetics, the plastics. I've said that we did a simple research on our relationship with Burkina Faso, things that they import from us, and we extrapolated for 5 years. Within 5 years, if we are consistent, we'll be able to generate $5 billion just from Burkina Faso alone, from importing to them. $5 billion. How much is IMF giving us? $3 billion. Even that, look at the way we are suffering. The conditions, the stress. So, as a country, we need to sit down. We have the potential. I believe we can do it. If we have the political will, we can do it. I want President Mahama, at least he has 4 years. He's not going to seek for any re-election. He should set a record that all of us will refer to and say that, but for Mahama, Ghana would have been like this.
And coming to you, Dr. Theo Champong, these are crucial aspects to look at, but I'll still stay with you on the 24-hour economy and ask you from where you sit what the priority areas would be that we need to start working on in the immediate term. We already have that grouping led by Guzitano that is in charge of bringing this to bear, but what must we start working on today with the President's SONA?
Thank you very much. And I think Mark has made very important points in terms of the 24-hour economy, which I wholeheartedly align with. As for the areas or the sectors, a number of them have been outlined. So if you actually look on the NDC's manifesto, I think page 22, they outline 12 areas that they sort of, or sectors that they will focus on. And this cuts both economic and what I would call kind of social sectors. So they talk about agro-processing, they talk about manufacturing, they talk about pharmaceuticals, construction, sanitation, hospitality, all the way to health and security. And like Mark absolutely said, some of them we have sort of comparative advantages in those sectors. Others too, maybe not so much. But the important thing away from all these sectors is, why are these sectors not even delivering, right, currently without even a 24-hour, right, economy in terms of manufacturing or pharma, which Ghana has a huge advantage in the sub-region. I happen to have consulted for a number of donor programs within this space that is looking at like automotives, pharmaceuticals, and textile. And the evidence is very clear that if we get our act together, we can not only produce for the region, but even export to other countries in Africa under the AFCFTA. So the important thing for me becomes, how do you deal with the structural barriers, the things that Mark is talking about, right? The issues of energy, electricity, the issues of the taxes, when you're importing goods or even intermediate capital goods, the things that you need to turn these into product and services, the taxes at the port, what do you do about them? The interest rates, you go to the bank and you have to borrow 27, 30%. The exchange rate related issues and even security and all of that. And it comes down fundamentally for me to the point that the 24-hour economy cannot take place if you don't have the macro fundamentals right? And this is really the key thing that I expect the president and the finance minister in the coming weeks to lay more emphasis on the steps being taken to address the macro or the fundamentals so that we can actually be competitive. Because at the end of the day, 24-hour economic policy is all about competitiveness. If you implement all of these and you don't do it in a structured manner and it becomes sort of ad hoc and the interventions are not sequenced, what will happen is that we're still going to end up, at the bottom of the pile, where our goods, where the services that you're producing is not able to compete with others coming even from Burkina Faso or Nigeria or Cote d'Ivoire, for that matter. So the sectors are clear. Where we have the potential is very clear. The agro, the pharma, the construction, those things, not an issue. It is really for me the how bit. And the how bit is how you address those structural barriers, the energy issues, the tax issues, the interest rate issues, the exchange rate issues, how you provide security and improve productivity overall, because that is what is really at the heart of the whole Made in Ghana or Eat, Consume Ghana agenda. And you can go back to Kwame Nkrumah's, first and second 7-year development plans. You can look at other plans. And it's actually not that different, right, in terms of what you need to do to push and make these sectors, competitive for producers and consumers in Ghana, as well as for export. So yeah, it comes back for me fundamentally, not in terms of sector focus, but what you do to address those structural barriers. And then those sectors will pick up by themselves.
Right. And speaking of sectors picking up by themselves, Dr. Obeng, as we talk about the 24-hour economy, you are the men on the ground. You are there. You have the numbers. How can the door of the 24-hour economy be opened to you? What are some of the areas that you feel this government can help out? Yes, we've spoken about the nitty-gritty of inflation and all of that, but practically, what areas are you hoping to go in? How can you be assisted?
Yeah. I've told you about trade diversification, that we want to diversify. And so most of us have actually even put their proposals before government to migrate into manufacturing. And so we can do manufacturing. In 24 hours, as traders, we will be doing our trading in the normal daylight. And if we have the opportunity to set out our factories, we can have even better opportunity to supervise our factories in the night. So it goes very well even for the traders if government will make a deliberate effort to support us. So that's why the enabling environment is important, like Dr. Chiu talked about the interest rate, that's access to credit. How is that government deliberately, because if you want it to work, then there should be a deliberate effort for you to support people to do it, to subsidize, provide the needed incentives, and we are open for this.
Right.
And that's why we are also expecting a government to talk about access to affordable credit, as have been promised for our women in the market. So we are also expecting that the president also talk about that, because access to credit will also enhance on the 24-hour economy. Because if we have that access, then we can also trade into the 24-hour economy. So it's very essential. We are bracing ourselves up for this laudable agenda. But then also we have to make a conscious effort to support, especially if we are able to identify where we have the comparative advantage, as Mark was talking about, because it's not everything that we can also produce in this country.
Exactly.
So in the areas that have the comparative advantage, we make conscious efforts to bring that out and encourage people to go there, and we'll be able to do it and do it well.
Let me bring in Dr. Kwapong, Osani Kwapong. Your quick take on the 24-hour economy, and I'm thinking as well about the headache of state-owned enterprises when it comes to governance, for example. What are you looking at in respect of that? Do we have Dr. Osani Kwapong? Hello, Doc. If you can hear me, you would have to unmute. It appears we've lost Dr. Osani Kwapong. I would have wanted, then I'll throw that question to you. The headache of state-owned enterprises. We keep bleeding, we spend so much, we incur losses, and yet look at the salaries some of them, the CEOs and top managers earn. So I'm starting with your final thoughts, all of you gentlemen, but I'll start from that standpoint. Maybe you can give us a quick thought on that as you add your final thoughts.
Most of the state enterprises are really not functioning properly. And I think that recently SIGA is putting in measures, strategies in place so that they can best be positioned and they can change their way of doing things. I have the opportunity to do a consultancy for one of them. We wrote a case for BOST. We realized that BOST is now in the path of making some profit. Formerly, it was posting some losses, but in recent times, it's now becoming more profitable. I do hope that the new CEO will take clue from the former CEO.
Mr. Provençal, that's the former.
Yes, the former CEO. See how best they can actually position it. So state-owned enterprises by its own self needs to sit down and look at it critically. What can we do to ensure that we now post profit? You cannot consistently be making losses. After all, you generate the revenue to pay yourselves. Why should we be making losses? And some of them are even near monopoly. And how can a monopoly be making significant losses like ECG? It's just because of inefficiency in terms of revenue generation. If they're able to do well and ensure that people pay their electricity on time and pay well, you will be surprised. Look, I was doing a particular research in some part of the communities. Electricity was given to them for more than 4 years. No even meters, no bill, nothing. So it is about government also ensuring that the efficiency comes in and the state enterprise also ensuring that they have the efficiency in place. So in that manner, we can have a better system in place.
All right. Mark?
Yeah.
Any thoughts, final thoughts for us as we wrap the conversation?
On the state-owned enterprise?
Oh, no. This was just a general question.
I mean, from what you have experienced over the years, it goes to confirm that there is no business for government to be in business.
Government has no business in business.
There's no business.
Create the atmosphere.
Create the atmosphere.
Right.
Consistently. Look at all these state-owned enterprises. In fact, it's one of the reasons why we have this high debt. Because some of the contingent liabilities are coming from these state-owned enterprises. And of course, you cannot be doing that. Create the environment, allow the private sector to work. And I know that you have a very competent private sector in Ghana that, given the support, you'll be able to do a lot of things. For this SONA, for me, as the name says, it's going to give us just the state. I'm looking forward to the budget. The budget will now come out with the policies and directions that will help us come out from these difficulties that we are in now. And I'm expecting that you should be able to navigate all these challenges going forward. Thank you.
Dr. Theo Champong, final thoughts?
Yeah, so I agree that we need to do more for the private sector. But the private sector cannot function if you don't have a competent state. You know, China and a number of the East Asian countries have clearly shown us that if you have a competent and an efficient state, you can deliver better economic governance outcomes for your people and for the private sector as well. So we actually need both to really work together. We need a competent state delivery machinery. Those state-owned enterprises have to deliver profitability and dividends for the citizens of Ghana, not just as a conduit of sharing political, patronage. And that would be my concluding thoughts.
Final thoughts from you, Dr. Joseph Obeng. Very brief final thoughts.
Yeah, there's too much waste in the system. We have to look at it. Much as we are thinking about revenue generation, we have to think about how the expenditure pattern, we have to evaluate and then scrutinize it well, and then fund value for money policies to address that. That's it. Thank you. And then I will also encourage the government to reduce their taxes, and that is the only sure way that will enhance on revenue, because that's what will assure compliance, and that government should be emboldened to reduce these taxes, and then compliance will be assured, and we'll get our work to develop this country and rope in more people outside the tax net. That's what we have to do.
All right.
A lot more people into it, and then we could.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. You've enriched the conversation, and now, well, all roads lead to Parliament. You've seen the footage in the background. They are gearing up for President John Mahama's second term and the first or the maiden SONA of his second term. Those who joined us for the conversation, Dr. Theo Champong, economist and political risk analyst, Dr. Jabir Mohammed, senior lecturer, University of Ghana Business School, Mark Bedu Abuaje, Chief Executive Officer, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Dr. Joseph Obeng, President, Ghana Union of Traders Association. We also had Dr. John Osai Kwapong, a CDD fellow. We're so grateful to you. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. Well, we take you straight there. We'll leave you with some of the footage coming through from Parliament. And of course, you can expect that in the next few minutes, we'll be bringing you the State of the Nation address, courtesy the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. Thank you for watching. My name is Benjamin Akakpo. I did this together with Sweetie Abochi.
The big man himself.
Yeah, the big man.